Hello and welcome to Quora Queries. I'm Q, and I will be taking you through today's Q&A. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment if you want more questions like this. Now, let's get into this. Is it unprofessional to tell my boss that I'm going to resign if he doesn't increase my salary? You could always approach it like a hostage negotiation. I'll stay, but only if my salary gets a little more generous. What can you offer me to keep me from taking my talents elsewhere? What is the community thinking? Reply 1. I was a junior engineer at a major, publicly traded worldwide company, over 20,000 employees, working at a small office. I had a diverse background from before starting engineering school and was able to manage large projects that an intermediate or senior engineer typically managed. I had been working 60-plus-hour work weeks for over 6 months with little additional support when asked for. I had enough one day, and I emailed my manager requesting a meeting. He came to my office, sat down, and I told him that I was burnt out from the lack of support and felt underpaid for the level I was working at. I told him that I needed a raise immediately or I would put my 2 weeks notice in. He said that he needed to talk to his manager and to give him a few days. I said sure, but to be very clear to his manager that I would serve my notice if nothing was done. I had an $8,000 per year raise 2 days later. That said, you have to be valuable to the company to pull it off and be willing to quit if it doesn't happen. If you don't quit if they don't offer a raise, then they know your threats have no merit. It's not unprofessional if you do it professionally, and always know your worth and fight for it, especially with big, publicly traded companies. Reply 2. I once told my boss something like that. Had been in my role in marketing for 2 years after being promoted up from an entry-level position. I had a degree but no advanced experience. My salary got bumped up when I moved into marketing but was still very low. I told my boss that I would leave in a year if 3 conditions weren't met. Significant salary increase. Title bump. While I worked in Norway where titles are less important, we were an American company, and having the word executive in your title made it a lot easier to get things done with HQ. A new computer. I had the same one as every employee while using graphics software that it wasn't built for. It took almost a year to get it done. But I got all 3 as they were not unreasonable demands, and I had given enough time to make it happen in a company that didn't move very fast. I left a year or so after that for greener pastures, and my replacement still got 50% higher salary than my final pay, and eventually hired me as a consultant to do part of the job anyway. So I was still severely underpaid even after the bump. Title bump was useful when applying for new jobs. I mean, it's a power move if you're really ready to leave. But maybe don't frame it as give me more money or I'm gone. Try I'm considering new opportunities, but I'd prefer to stay if we can talk numbers. Continue. Reply 3. Not just unprofessional, it's stupid. You don't show your cards to everyone when playing poker, do you? So, when IT was really catching fire, I went and got a couple of certifications. I wasn't doing IT for the company I was working at, but computers and networks were a long-time hobby of mine. To be frank, I really didn't think you could make a living doing IT at the time. Oh, how times have changed. I looked around and got an offer from a well-known company for a government contract at a salary 30% more than what I was making. I liked my boss, the owner of the company, so I went to see him and told him about my new certifications, knowing he had a contract that could use my services. I asked if he would put me on that contract so I could work in IT. Money never entered the conversation. I was a little put off when he told me that I should test the waters. I handed him my resignation letter that I was holding in my hand right then and there and never looked back. If you make an ultimatum, expect to be called on it. Have your out before you make your demands. Reply 4. Early in my career, I was feeling drastically underpaid for the amount of work I was doing and the skill set I possessed. I asked my direct supervisor for a raise. She told me to go talk to her manager. I went and spoke with her, and she told me to prove that I'm worth more money, which I thought I had already proven by my skill set and workload. I started applying for jobs, and within a month landed one at a 40% pay increase. When asked at my exit interview why I was leaving, I told HR the scenario and the new job was their proof I was worth more. Best thing to do is find a better paying position and move on. Once you ask for a raise and are denied that raise, things aren't going to get any better. Reply 5. Here's how raises work. If you're going to ask for a raise, it's an ultimatum. They will either give you one or not. If they don't and you stay, they know you were bluffing. If they give you a raise, you know that you've been more valuable the entire time and they were taking advantage of you. Once, I decided I wanted to sell my time for more money. I walked into the boss's office and said, "Starting next month, my services will cost $XXX per month." He just said, "Okay." I did the same thing a couple years later with the same result. Point is, he knew it wasn't a bluff. A different job, I asked for a raise, and they said no. I left the next Monday. The owner was mad, but he made the decision, not me. Reply 6. The approach I've always used, whether it was because I felt I was underpaid, or because I felt I could no longer work for a boss because they were micromanagers, dishonest, or unethical. Interview for a new job, and when you found the position, accept it and tell your manager that you're leaving, when you're leaving, and why you're leaving. Do not tell your manager where you're going, and do not reveal your new salary. Your manager might make a counteroffer, in which case you'll need to decide whether or not to stay. If you want to stay, make sure your boss writes up the new offer as he would for a new job applicant. You'll need to call the manager at the other company and retract your acceptance. Be prepared for pushback. A coworker used this approach about every 2 years and received more pay raises than anyone else. While threatening to resign over salary might get attention, it's often better to use more constructive, open-ended negotiation tactics. If you're ready to leave, that's a valid position, but it's important to recognize that there's a fine line between assertiveness and being perceived as overly dramatic or manipulative. Ultimately, it depends on your relationship with your boss, your company culture, and how prepared you are to follow through on your threat. Reply 7. At a previous job, I was the assistant manager when an employee approached the general manager with an ultimatum like the one the OP talks about. It did not go well. She was well-liked and valuable, but he told her that none of that mattered, and any and all demands and ultimatums would be treated the same, and that she knew where the door was. But because she was also fairly young and inexperienced at negotiating raises, and as I said, the GM liked her, he then said, "But how about this? I'll pretend you never said any of what you just said, and you can rethink how you'd like to approach this so we can have a conversation. But this is a one-time offer." She was smart enough to listen, took a few minutes to consider, and then approached the GM again, this time explaining she had received an offer from another company for more money and that she didn't want to leave, but that there was no way she could ignore the offer and stay for what we were paying her. Plus, she felt she was worth a raise. By explaining the situation instead of making a demand, it allowed them to talk. After about half an hour behind closed doors, she came out with a raise that was less than the new job would have offered, but still a substantial increase from her current pay, but also with the understanding it meant that she would not get an annual raise with everyone else that year. This was a compromise both of them could live with, and she stayed. Reply 8. No, loyalty only goes one way. The sooner you figure that out, the better. My boss told me after working 20 years for my last company that the owners were trying to outsource my job, but after finding out they'd have to pay more money, they kept my sorry ass. And by the way, I never took off more than a day or two, except when I was in the hospital for 2 weeks with the swine flu. Good luck and don't look back. Reply 9. I was working at a CPA firm when I got the news that I had just passed all the requirements to be a CPA myself. That made me the only CPA in the firm besides my boss, the owner. When I told him the good news, before even saying congratulations, he told me not to expect a raise since I would still be doing the same job I did yesterday. I didn't mention the word raise. I took my new CPA credential, and want to work for someone who appreciated all the work that went into gaining that license? Reply 10. I did. I did have another job offer, and I simply told them I couldn't get a mortgage with my pay and needed to make X dollar. I also was contemplating going back out of state with my family, so I didn't say anything about another offer. My kids were with my husband 4 hours away. I needed to secure housing to be reunited with my family. They raised my pay and I stayed. I wanted them to know that it was a matter of me staying or leaving. I knew they would raise my pay, but they needed the opportunity to know what I needed. I did it respectfully and was not aggressive at all. Hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you turn on the notification bell so that you get alerts on the next question. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time. Bye-bye.